and the Union Army gets there first, and it takes the high ground. It's not like it's not like a steep hill or anything like this. But there's just a slight hill there, just a slight rise in the hill, and they know that they have the strategic advantage that they take the high ground. They basically get themselves positioned on the high ground, and Lee comes and attacks them after several days, and it's a slaughter.
Random question: if they got as far up as Pennsylvania, why didn't they just go to Washington D.C.?
Well, they try to get to Washington D.C. is defended with lots of reserves, and he's basically, Lee is basically trying to get the Northerners. He's trying to do something like what Sherman's doing. He's trying to get the Northerners to pay a price and to remove public support for the war. If the Northerners feel some pain, they will sue for peace. It has sort of diplomatic implications. I don't think that Gettysburg and his push really he hopes to defeat the North at all. But he can end the war if he can get the Northerners to vote for McClellan in 1864, or to sue for peace.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question. How did they get control of, so they got Vicksburg. How would they control the Mississippi then?
I think that by this time they actually control New Orleans as well. If you control New Orleans at the mouth of the Mississippi and Vicksburg up in the northern Mississippi, and then you have Missouri up above, you basically got the Mississippi in your hands. You basically control both ends of it.
Okay.
One of the other things that's going on in the Civil War on the home front is that they institute the draft. And they instituted it, and I don't know if anybody's seen Gangs of New York?
What?
With Gangs of New York movie. Anyway, Gangs of New York, you see a little bit about the Civil War stuff going on, where rich people can buy their way out of the draft for $300. So in New York, there are riots about being against the draft, partly because it's unfair that poor people should all be drafted and that rich people can buy their way out. Another part of the riots in New York, I must say, is that the rioters go to what they call it a pogrom, or they basically go after African Americans. They have to go after blacks. They go out and attack blacks in the streets. They go after an orphanage filled with black kids. The police have to come in and rescue them. So, I bring this up because I don't want you to think, oh yeah, people in the North are sort of enlightened and they have a different attitude towards slaves and African Americans than people in the South. Not true. But the war is increasingly controversial, and Lincoln has got to maintain a certain amount of political support for the war, and this is becoming increasingly difficult. And in general, I would say, the American public has a very short attention span when it comes to war. They're very enthusiastic about starting a war, but they're not much on staying in there, which may be a good thing.
Were blacks targets just arbitrarily,
I'm not sure why blacks are targets because they compete with poor people for jobs in a way, and they can be the cheaper alternative a lot of times. And once the war, slavery is an issue in the war, and you don't want to go fight the war anyway, and it's just another place to direct your rage. I don't know if there are any local issues in New York though that might have also contributed to this. But you will frequently get a question about draft riots. Oftentimes it will be nothing more complicated than a geography question, like New York or whatever. Here are some election posters for 1864. 1864 is, you can see McClellan's campaigning on a platform of armistice, and he's basically, and this is basically the argument by Lincoln that McClellan is arguing for armistice. It's going to mean a fall in wages, no market for produce, invasion, civil war, anarchy, despotism, blah blah blah. And here's Lincoln electing Lincoln is going to be in the draft and ruin. Elect McClellan, and you get peace, right?
Does McClellan actually have plans?
Yes, he does. Yeah, McClellan is genuinely a peace candidate in 1864. He's the general who was not aggressive enough, and now he's a political candidate, and he is, I believe, a Democratic candidate. And here's the vote. He doesn't actually poll very well here. Well, this is not as sophisticated a map as the other one, but you can see that this this election comes right after. I don't know if it comes after Gettysburg and Vicksburg. It comes right after some military victories on the part of the Union Army, and the attitude towards people, towards the war, sort of gets this little surge just as people go to the elections. It's very dicey about who's going to win the election, but Grant is able to pull off a couple military victories, and people vote for Lincoln. This is a good moment for Lincoln to be going to the polls. So we see Republican is the red, Democratic is McClellan, and obviously the South doesn't count anymore. They don't vote in the Union. This is still during the Civil War. The Civil War ends in 1865.
So it's basically guaranteed Republican.
Yeah, it's pretty much guaranteed a Republican victory. Although, if there's enough, it could have been a lot closer if the war had been going poorly. This is Nick. This is Nick. This is Lincoln's second inauguration. There's Lincoln. In front of the White House, Capitol. Remember, you get elected in 1864. You're inaugurated in 1865. You're not inaugurated until the next year, right? That's when they swear you in. The Civil War ends where Grant surrounds Lee at a little place called Appomattox, and they basically go inside this little courthouse, this little house, and they sign the surrender documents here. And this is where, a famous spot because it's the end of the Civil War. But this is where the Civil War was actually, where General Lee signed the surrender documents. Not a very impressive place at all. Just a little courthouse, little house. So, take a 5-minute